All right, so one thing we introduced last week and have continued to take a look at this week are when we have two parallel lines and they are cut by a transversal. We've looked at the different angle relationships that have formed. So as a quick review down here at the bottom, if two lines are parallel, then my alternate interior angles are always going to be congruent. My corresponding angles are always going to be congruent. And my consecutive interior angles are supplementary. So again, these statements here only work if I know my lines are parallel. And if they are, I've got alternate interior angles and corresponding angles that will have the exact same measure. And then my consecutive interior angles will add up to 180. And then also as a note, we talked about vertical angles, and they are always congruent. So it does not matter if my lines are parallel or not. Vertical angles will still be congruent. So let's take a look at the problem here. It says if the measure of angle 5 is 40 degrees, find the measure of angle 7, angle 2, angle 1, and angle 4, and then we need to always make sure we're justifying our answer. So the first thing I'm going to do is find angle 5 and label it. So angle 5 is right here, and that is 40 degrees. So I just kind of like to mark that just so I kind of have an idea of what we're looking at here. So I'm just going to start with angle 7. As I'm working this problem out, please keep in mind that there are many ways to solve each of these angles. So I might use corresponding angles, but you may see that you could use supplementary angles, or you could use consecutive interior or vertical. So just because I see it a certain way doesn't mean there are not multiple ways to get the correct answer. The angle measure will always be the same, but there's many options to justify it depending on how you saw it. So if I start with angle 5 being 40, and I am looking for the measure of angle 7. Angle 7 is right over here, so 5 and 7 are vertical angles, and I know that vertical angles are always congruent. So I'm going to say angle 7 is 40 degrees, and my justification is going to be that angle 5 and angle 7 are vertical angles. Then if we go to look at angle 2, here we should notice angle 5 is here and angle 2 is over here. So 5 and 2 do not have a relationship that we've talked about, but we can use relationships that we've talked about in order to kind of figure that out. So I'm going to come back to angle 2 and I'm going to move on to angle 1. So angle 1 and angle 5, we should notice are corresponding angles. And again, if the lines are parallel, which they are, corresponding angles are congruent. So I also know that angle 1 is 40 degrees. And my justification for that could be that angle 5 and angle 1 are corresponding angles. And again, we know the definition of corresponding angles. Since the lines are parallel, they're going to be the same. So now, I said I'd come back to 2. Now that I know, and I'm going to mark it up here, now that I know angle 1 is 40 degrees, we should notice that angle 1 and 2 form a linear pair. They create this straight angle here. They form this line. So since 1 and 2 are supplementary, they form that line, I know they're going to add up to 180. So angle 1 plus angle 2 are going to equal 180 degrees. I know angle 1 is 40 degrees, so now I just need to figure out the measure of angle 2. So when I subtract 40 degrees from both sides, I get angle 2 is 140 degrees. And again, my justification for that one would be angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary angles. And then we've got one more to go. We've got angle 4. So again, angle 4 is right here. So angle 5 and angle 4 are consecutive interior angles. So I know that my consecutive interior angles will be supplementary since my lines are parallel. So again, the math is going to work out the same as up here. 4 and 5 are going to be supplementary. So I know that angle 4 is going to also be 140 degrees. And my justification for that is because angle 4 and angle 5 are consecutive interior angles. And again, for this one, some of you might just said, well, 4 and 2 are vertical, and that would have worked as well. So once you start finding angles, you can use any of their angle measures to help you find the rest of them. You don't necessarily